I didn't yell at him. I didn't kick him out. I didn't even confront him. Instead, for 10 straight years, I gave him the cheapest bottle of wine I could find every single Christmas. And trust me, for someone like him, that was devastating. Before we get into this story, if you've ever watched someone disrespect your kindness, your home, or your generosity and thought, one day I'll get even, then you're in the right place. Hit subscribe, tap like, and settle in. This isn't loud revenge. This is surgical. Let me take you back. This story stretches over nearly a decade, but it starts much earlier, in our mid-20s, when friendships were solid. Futures felt open, and we were all still figuring out who we'd spend our lives with. One of my closest friends, I'll call her Anna, is genuinely one of the kindest people I know. The type who remembers birthdays without reminders. The type who brings food when you're sick without being asked. Sweet, thoughtful, endlessly patient. And then there's her husband. Now listen, this isn't one of those stories where the villain twirls a mustache and laughs maniacally. No, that would almost be easier. Her husband is complicated. His heart is technically in the right place. He's not cruel, he's not malicious, but he is deeply insecure. And insecure people often mask it in the most exhausting way possible, by constantly needing to prove they re the smartest person in the room. You know the type. Every conversation becomes a performance. Every topic becomes a stage. He pokes fun at people under the guise of jokes. He dismisses things he doesn't understand. He mocks experiences he's never had. And worst of all, he believes that the mere act of thinking about something automatically makes him an expert on it. He's not stupid, but he's absolutely not the genius he believes himself to be. From the very beginning, he saw me as competition. When Anna and I stayed close after we both started dating seriously, something in him shifted. He'd make little comments, passive jokes, subtle digs. Nothing outright hostile, just enough to try and undermine our friendship. It didn't work. Anna and I stayed close, always did. Years passed. Relationships turned into marriages, careers stabilized, and then came a big moment in my life, a milestone worth celebrating. So I hosted a party. Not just any party, one of those parties. The kind where you clean for days beforehand. The kind where you carefully plan the food, the music, the seating. The kind where you open your home not just to entertain, but to share something meaningful. Now, my husband had recently received a gift from a work partner, 2 bottles of extraordinarily expensive wine. The kind of wine that doesn't just sit on a shelf. The kind you save for a moment. Neither of us had ever tasted something like that before, and I was excited. Not in a bragging way, not a look how fancy we are way, but in a sharing joy way. In an Italian household, hospitality isn't optional, it's sacred. You give your best to your guests? Always. So we opened the wine. I still remember the sound of the cork. The way the room smelled richer after it was poured. The way people smiled after the first sip. And then there was him. He poured himself a glass, drank it quickly, then another. And then, casually, loudly, he laughed and said something that sucked the air out of the room. He scoffed about how ridiculous it was to spend that much money on wine. How it was clearly just a way to show off. How he would never waste money like that. How people who buy expensive wine are just compensating for something. And then he poured himself a third glass. I didn't feel anger at first, I felt heat. That slow, creeping warmth behind the eyes. That tightening in the chest. That unmistakable sensation when your body reacts before your mind catches up. My friend tried to shush him, gently, embarrassed, quietly apologetic, but the damage was already done. Because here's the thing, and if you understand Italian culture, you'll understand this immediately. Insulting someone's hospitality is not just rude, it's unforgivable. You don't mock the food someone serves you. You don't belittle the effort someone made. And you certainly don't criticize a gift while continuing to consume it. My husband caught my eye. He didn't say a word. But I knew. He was done. I was done. We didn't cause a scene. We finished the night politely. Smiles stayed on faces. Plates were cleared, goodbyes were exchanged, and from that moment on, he was never invited again, not to dinners, not to parties, not to holidays. And Nana remained my friend, always welcome, always cherished, But her husband? He was quietly, permanently removed from my home, and that could have been the end of it. But revenge doesn't always announce itself immediately. Sometimes it waits. Christmas came, then another and another, and that's when I found the perfect solution. See, every year I give thoughtful gifts, high quality, carefully chosen. Wine, food, experiences, things that reflect care. Everyone receives something special. Everyone except him. For him, I began a tradition. Every December, I walk into the store. I scan the shelves. And I deliberately select the cheapest bottle of sparkling wine I can find. Spumante, not Prosecco, not champagne. Just barely acceptable, technically drinkable, emotionally insulting. I pair it with a flimsy Christmas card, nothing personal. Nothing warm, just enough to be polite. And every single year I hand it to him with a perfectly pleasant smile. Because here's the beauty of it, I'm not offending him. I'm respecting his own words, after all. He wouldn't want me wasting money on something expensive, right? The first year, he laughed awkwardly. The second year, he raised an eyebrow. By the third year, he noticed. By the fifth year, everyone noticed. By year 10, it had become legendary. No one could call me rude. No one could accuse me of cruelty, because I was simply honoring his stated values. And the best part? He can't say a word. Because complaining would mean admitting that expensive wine does matter. That generosity does matter. That hospitality does matter. And every Christmas when I hand him that bottle, I feel something I never felt the night he insulted me. Peace, vindication, balance restored. So what's the lesson here? You don't need to shout to win. You don't need to explode to be heard. And you certainly don't need to stoop to someone's level. Sometimes the most devastating revenge is perfect politeness. If you enjoyed this story, hit like, subscribe for more stories of quiet justice and poetic revenge, and tell me in the comments, what's the pettiest revenge you've ever seen?